economy, but also plays a key role in improving lives around the world. ITI member companies develop revolutionary products and services that connect and inform. And today's event is designed to spotlight how tech companies also promote innovation around the world through sound public policies, from building the workforce of the future to supporting small businesses and local economies. Our conversation today will feature leading voices from the public and private sectors, and to talk about efforts that are spurring economic growth across the United States. As always, we encourage you to be a part of our conversation today by using the hashtag Bridge for Innovation on social media. And now let's jump into today's conversation. We have representatives, as I mentioned, from the public and private sector. We'll be joined shortly by Congressman John Curtis, who is wrapped up in a bill markup and promises to be with us shortly. But let me introduce the rest of our panelists today, and we'll get right into our discussion. Kent Walker is president of global affairs at Google and, of course, the parent company Alphabet, where he oversees the teams responsible for legal matters, government affairs, content policy, and philanthropy. Steve Hartel is vice president of public policy at Amazon, where he leads the congressional affairs team. And Shannon Taylor is head of technology and manufacturing policy at Intel, where she leads development of and advocacy for federal technology, manufacturing, and sustainability. Delighted to have all three of you with us today to talk about the top issues in tech policy and innovation today. And Kent, I want to start with you and with our thanks for being with us today from Alphabet and Google. Now, of course, Google is one of the storied American technology company success stories, really a crown jewel of our innovation economy here in the US. And the other thing that's great about Google and Alphabet is it also has a great American success story. One of the co-founders, of course, is an immigrant to the US. And that, of course, is true of many technology companies in the US. As well, ensuring that highly skilled workers from around the world can come to the United States, work here, and maybe even start the next Google. That's imperative for improving American innovation and our economy. And Kent, I wanted to ask for your thoughts on how we can enhance both innovation and national security through retaining the best and the brightest from around the world who want to come here, work here, and become our next great immigrant scientists and engineers.
Thanks, Jason. It's a great question, a great way to kick off this conversation. We take pride at Google that we have been able to attract some of the leading computer scientists, computer engineers from around the world, and they're working on projects that are critical, not just to American innovation, but as you say, to national security. Things like advanced artificial intelligence, quantum computing, cyber defense, cybersecurity, and the like. When we are doing that, we really rely on the ability to be able to hire extraordinarily talented people, regardless of where they come from. And the challenges that we're facing right now is that so many of them are struggling with the H-1B visa process, not winning the lottery, running into these massive backlogs when it comes to green cards, or just seeing processing delays. So at Google alone, there are probably 500 engineers every year that we can't hire in the US because of these problems. If you look at the country as a whole, something like 65,000 green cards went unused. That's a real tragedy for American innovation, American competitiveness around the world. The idea that we would leave tens of thousands of unused green cards available at a time when we're having a hard time finding qualified workers is hard to understand. So we see the Congress making great progress on issues like USICA and trying to provide more funding for semiconductor development and other kinds of innovation. But if USICA passes and we actually do more funding there, there's a report out that suggests that that will increase the demand for engineering talent by something like 13% over the next decade. It expands one part of the pipe and constricts the other part of the pipe if you expand the funding, but contract the number of people you can hire to actually do that great work. So we want to make sure that we have the supply to meet the demand, and we can live up to those obligations around innovation, economic competitiveness around the world, and also national security.
Excellent point. And millions of open jobs in companies like Google and other American tech companies, and the best and the brightest from around the world who want to come here, as you noted. It'd be a shame if we didn't do everything we could to give them the opportunity they're looking for to join the tech industry here. Speaking of tech innovation, Steve, welcome. Thanks for being here on day 2 of Prime Day. I know that some of the 12 million boxes that'll be on my doorstep in the next few days are a testament to how well Prime Day is going so far. So I know it's a busy time for you and appreciate your being here. As we heard from Kent, innovation is driven by people. And Amazon certainly is a big people-focused organization, more than 1.1 million employees in the U.S. Can you talk to me about what innovation means to you and what Amazon is doing to help drive innovation in the U.S.?
Well, first of all, thank you and for that great intro, and thank you for your did you say 12 million boxes? That seems like perhaps a little exaggeration, Jason, but thank you for taking advantage of great deals today on Prime Day. And thank you for ITI for having this panel, because I think it really is something that each of us get excited about, kind of talking about what innovation means to our individual companies. And at Amazon, innovation is foundational, and it's foundational. It runs kind of deep in the DNA of the company, and connects directly to our, kind of our view of customer centricity. And, we know a lot and we love to hear from customers like the Oxmans, but, customers have very high standards and they're very demanding. And so for companies to meet the, always, never fully satisfied, kind of customer demand out there, you have to innovate, and you have to innovate new products and services to continue to win business and retain customers. And that's what really drives the innovation cycle at Amazon. And you can really look at some of the things that we're fielding now. I mean, just walk out technology in not only in Amazon Fresh stores, but it's now getting broader adoption out in the retail community is a really interesting new way of shopping in physical locations. In our fulfillment networks, we are constantly innovating in fulfillment centers using machine learning, using robotics to drive the time that it takes. Jason, that when you order something on Prime Day, we now have that order boxed and out the door in under 2 hours. And that was, not that long ago, 12, 14, 16, 18 hours. So we're making tremendous strides. We're innovating inside our own business processes. And then there are opportunities to like really make broad, big contributions. And in this area, we've launched our Project Kuiper, which is a network of low orbit satellites to provide pervasive broadband connectivity around the globe. And this is something that we're very excited about. It's, a big area of investment for the company. But as you point out, it's really, it's kind of at its core, innovating and not only meeting customer demand, but anticipating customer demand. And that's another example of where we're innovating and really looking to kind of jump the technology curve a little bit. And if Mr. Curtis were here, just in spots of Southwest Utah where you don't necessarily have terrestrial broadband connectivity at speeds that you might have in Salt Lake City, hopefully technology like Kuiper will get us there.
Great. Thanks, Steve. And hopefully Congressman Curtis will still be able to join us shortly as he works his way through markup. Let's stay on the subject of innovation. Shannon, I want to come to you. I mentioned that your portfolio at Intel includes technology and manufacturing policy. So I wanted to take the opportunity to ask you for your policy recommendation roadmap, if you will. Intel has been in the headlines quite a bit lately for the investment that the company is making. You've got already groundbreaking on fabs 52 and 62 in Arizona. And of course, Intel recently announced another $20 billion plus in investment in Ohio manufacturing. So just on a tear in innovation and investment in manufacturing. But of course, as Intel makes clear, and you've talked a lot about, There is a public policy component to all of this. We need to make sure that the policy roadmap is one that promotes this kind of investment in manufacturing capability. So can you talk to us a little bit about Intel's perspective on the best way the federal government can help promote innovation and growth in the private sector?
Yeah, you bet. And echoing my colleagues, thanks for holding this panel today and for having me. And Kent set me up perfectly for this answer. We're at an inflection point right now in the global technology race. It's really a moment that will determine the future of global technology innovation and America's role in that future. The single most important thing that federal policymakers can do right now to promote that innovation and competitiveness is to fund the Chips for America Act. So as you all are well aware, the CHIPS Act incentive programs became law 18 months ago, but Congress has not yet provided the funding for it. Funding these programs will strengthen our economy and our national security by unlocking billions more in private capital. You alluded to that, Jason. We already have expansions underway in New Mexico and Arizona. We have planned investment in Ohio, and the future is really bright there. And all of that investment is critical, will create tens of thousands of new jobs. This is critically important because advanced semiconductor technology is the literal physical bedrock of all the technologies that Kent and Steve and others in the tech industry are developing. So it's the key to our present and future, from cars to computers, education to healthcare. We need a secure supply of chips made here in the U.S. Intel is the only American semiconductor manufacturer left that can produce at the leading edge. We're committed to that manufacturing here in the U.S., but to achieve the scope and the scale that we need to secure the future of advanced chip making here in the U.S., time really is of the essence for funding the CHIPS Act. And, Jason, it's not just about keeping the United States competitive. It's also about jobs and workforce opportunity here in the U.S. We've been losing manufacturing jobs here in the U.S. for decades, and the CHIPS funding would help recreate many of those manufacturing jobs in the U.S. Each new fab built in the U.S. means thousands of new jobs. For Intel, each new fab generates about 3,000 construction jobs. Once completed, supports another 1,500 permanent full-time positions. We also have a 13x multiplier, which means for each of those 1,500 Intel jobs, we support or create another 13 jobs in the local, regional, and national ecosystem. In addition to that, the CHIPS Act emphasizes workforce development, so not just creating those jobs, but how do you staff them? And I know we'll get into that a little bit later, but it will help create the education and workforce development programs that we need to train American workers for those new jobs here.
Terrific. Thanks, Shannon. And, as you said, the opportunity to bring manufacturing back to the U.S. Is one that Intel has been at the forefront of seizing, and we really appreciate those efforts. And I want to get back to you in a few minutes. I want to ask you more about how we get that CHIPS Act funding across the finish line. But you have allowed me to get back to Kent on that issue of tech jobs, and Kent mentioned it so eloquently earlier. About the importance of making sure that as we continue to grow the innovation economy here in the U.S., that we have people to fill the jobs that we need, whether it's at Intel's manufacturing facility or the more than 150,000 jobs that Google has created in recent years. And Kent, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, and this is a real issue that Google and you in particular have been very eloquent and outspoken on, and that is the issue of dreamers in the U.S. Google, of course, employs dreamers, but more importantly, you have encouraged empathy across the tech industry. You've certainly been a driving force in ITI, making this a policy priority, in encouraging advocacy, speaking up on behalf of dreamers, those who came to the U.S. As very small children, and really are Americans, as we like to say, in everything except that one piece of paper that they lack. So I wanted to ask you, Kent, how this became such a focus for you, and on the issue of dreamers. What can we do as a tech industry? What can we do as Americans to make sure that we advocate on behalf of dreamers and all those who are facing these visa challenges through no fault of their own and want to stay here and live the American dream?
Yeah, it's again a great question, Jason. I think it's important to remember that for many people deciding whether or not to come to the United States, to contribute to the United States, they're looking at not just can they get a visa, but what does it mean for their families, for their children over time? And if we have a rule that says, your children, when they turn 18, when they turn 21, will age out. We'll have to scramble to find a temporary status or maybe even leave the country, breaking families apart. America becomes a less attractive place for people to come and add their talents to the creativity we have all around us. We're at a time right now when we have roughly twice as many job openings as we have people looking for jobs. So the country really needs these folks to be able to come in and want to come in and feel as though they'll have a continued long-term role for their families to be part of America, rather than kids having to essentially self-deport. So we joined with, I think, something like 15 other companies across the U.S. in writing to Secretary Mayorkas, asking the administration to really take movement on some more robust policies that will allow something like 200,000 kids who've grown up in the U.S. to be protected by their parents' visa status. Unfortunately, we've seen in the last few years the green card backlog has only been getting worse. So that hurts businesses, that hurts workers who want to join the country. And just last week, we saw a report come out saying that the average processing time for green card approval is over 3 years. And that, in some cases, when you have in-country quotas on top of that, that can be decades. We've heard stories from some of our employees who have been waiting around for many years to have their immigration status confirmed. So being able to reassure them, being able to reassure their families is critical. So, and we are seeing movement on this, I should say. Senator Padilla, Senator Paul have a bill that would provide a pathway to citizenship for documented dreamers, the children of long-term visa holders. I think that's a great initiative. And if we can find ways to allow them to take jobs, create jobs, something like 80% of immigrants are 80% more likely to start a business, according to MIT. They, in many ways, per capita, their foreign-born folks are starting more businesses of every kind. That's great for the country. So I think we should be doing everything we can to streamline the process, expedite the process, make it clear that these incredibly talented folks from around the world are welcome to contribute to the U.S.
Well, we appreciate that very much. And your work on documented dreamers is particularly important to the tech industry. So appreciate that. I want to pause and welcome Congressman Curtis, who has joined us now, running down the hallways of Congress in a fashionable sense. I know the sock game is very important to the congressman. I want to welcome you on behalf of ITI and our member companies, Google, Amazon, and Intel, are here as well. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule today to join us. Really appreciate your participating in our conversation about the importance of innovation to Utah and the U.S. economy. Welcome. Oh, and you're muted, Congressman.
There we go. Are we good now?
We are good now.
Okay. It's a delight to be with you. And I'll just share a little inside ball with you because I want to point out how important innovation is. Sometimes you have to be really creative to pull something off. And if any of you can guess where I'm actually at from my background that's blurred there, you'll see that I'm in a tiny little restroom in the halls of Congress where I can get some privacy to be with you. So innovation is all about improvising right and going on the fly. Hey, I'm really pleased to be with you. I would like to maybe just share a few thoughts with you, and I don't know if you all have any questions.
Would welcome the opportunity to hear your thoughts and appreciate the innovation that you're displaying to be with us. And we certainly understand that you have a compressed schedule today. So please go ahead and welcome your thoughts.
We have to do. Listen, I have the blessing of living in the district, it's 3rd Congressional District in Utah. It's the youngest district in the country. I have everything from Arches National Park, Bears Ears Monument, vast rural areas to Silicon Slopes, and a very, very high-tech entrepreneurial area. And it gives me an opportunity to kind of see firsthand the parts and pieces of this. And I'm so pleased to represent this area. And I would say, at the heart of the success of innovation in the Utah is just an inbred, die-hard, we can figure this out mentality. And I think in many ways that comes from the roots, if you all are familiar with the roots and the history of Utah, people that literally carried hand carts across the plains to settle this desert area. And their prosperity is in many ways symbolically carrying those hand carts across the desert, right, as well, figuring out how to make the desert blossom, which is what the pioneers did here in Utah. And it takes a special skill set, and it's beyond hard work. Hard work is clearly a part of it, but it's believing in yourself. And I think, as I think about what we do here in Washington, D.C., I feel sometimes like we have a bucket of water, and every time an entrepreneur starts a fire, we're gonna pour that bucket of water over his or her fire, right? And so not only do entrepreneurs have to fight the market, they have to fight, living in the basement and all those things. They've got to fight a federal government or even a state government who has a bucket of water ready to pour over all of their projects. And so one of my roles here, I think, back in Washington, that's just really important, is helping people understand the dynamics of a business, big or small. And both of them are unique. And if we're not careful here in Washington, we have an ability to just automatically take all of that momentum away and that hard work. And really pleased that all of you represent on this call today represent vast success, and also are in tune with the very, very small guys and gals out there trying to make this happen and put it together and have success. And really pleased to be any part of that if I can. I'm so grateful for the many entrepreneurs in my district that work hard to keep the wheels of industry moving, and to be with you today. And I don't know if you have any questions. You'll find I'm like any politician here in Washington. I can keep talking, but would love to address any questions you all might have.
Well, thank you so much, Congressman. And of course, you appreciate the work of entrepreneurs. And I know in the district, they appreciate your work as well. You were recognized with the first Community Hero Award from Silicon Slopes, back home. And of course, you as a founder of a small business yourself, bring a great perspective there. I did want to ask you, and then give our panelists an opportunity to comment as well about two quick things. One, Utah, of course, just recognized in the 2020 census as literally the fastest growing state in the nation, population growth up 18% from 2010 to 2020, I should say. So I wanted to ask you about the challenges of tech hiring in Utah. That's what we were talking about before you joined us. Amazon, Google, Intel, all employing hundreds of thousands up to over 1 million people in the case of Amazon in the US, and having challenges finding people and wanting to attract the best and the brightest from around the world. You've been working on a bipartisan basis with Congresswoman Lofgren on the EAGLE Act, which of course would allow American employers to focus on hiring immigrants based on their merit and not their birthplace, which is kind of a hallmark of the tech industry. A predecessor bill to that was widely supported on a bipartisan basis. Wanted to ask for your thoughts on the importance of continuing America's history as an immigrant-focused economy, attracting the best and the brightest from around the world to work in the tech industry, and how we can help move forward your important efforts in that space.
It's a great question and a great mystery as well. Why can't we do this, right? Why can't we find this path forward? The EAGLE Act, in previous Congresses, it's had hundreds of sponsors, and we cannot get that across the finish line. It's probably one of the most frustrating things I've done here. I have another bill. It's called a state-sponsored visa. I'm hoping Congresswoman Lofgren will also co-sponsor that with me. Imagine Zoe Lofgren and John Curtis agreeing on a bill, and we should be able to pass that, right? And so I don't know our exact number in Utah, but our unemployment is either at 2 or maybe even slightly below 2. It's just really, really difficult to hire. And part of the answer, as you have alluded to, is all around us. It's good men and women who are willing to come from all over the world and live in the United States and work in the United States, and in many cases, eventually go back home, if that's what's best for them. And the fact that we have put up a barrier to that happening is really unfortunate and very problematic. Now, you ask what you can do. Let me just tell you a theory I have, and that is not necessarily all of you, I think all of you get it, but as a country, we're typically rewarding the wrong behavior here in Washington, D.C. So when a representative gets up and screams or shouts about illegal immigrants coming into the country, they get rewarded instead of having to be accountable for that statement. And to the extent that you and those that in your circle can say, wait a minute, let's be rewarding the right behavior in Washington, D.C., which is trying to find a solution forward on these answers. I think that's one of the things that's missing, and that I could certainly use back here, if that makes sense.
Makes good sense. Let me ask Kent from Google if he wanted to comment on that. We were talking about this very issue and the work that Google is doing on documented dreamers. Google, of course, employs dreamers and is one of the great American success stories. Kent, any thoughts on the congressman's efforts on the EAGLE Act or other immigration work that we're looking to move
on
forward?
behalf of all of us, let me thank you for the EAGLE Act and the other work you're doing on immigration. And if there are any ways we can help get that across the finish line, we share the frustration. We were saying earlier that the immigration system seems to be just stuck in molasses in terms of moving through on otherwise authorized green cards, letting things go to waste, make it harder for talented immigrants to come to the country. As Jason mentioned at the outset, Sergey Brin, one of our founders, was an immigrant to the country, and so many immigrants have founded so many companies in Utah and Silicon Valley around the country. It's a real entrepreneurial resource that we're not taking advantage of at a time of growing global competition, national security issues, et cetera. So anything we can do across the board, whether it's the country by country caps, the green card backlogs that are slowing things down, the documented dreamers issue that we talked about a little bit before you came on, where we're forcing families to potentially break up with, where we have visa holders here, but their kids are aging out of the program and can't stay with them. That makes it less attractive for people to come, to the country in the first place. So, and we know both you and Representative Lofgren, who represents our area out here, have a variety of important and interesting bills that would help resolve this in what feels like a bipartisan way, as you allude to. So, whatever it is that's causing the grit in the gears here, if there's any way any of us among ITI, those on the call, more generally, can support your efforts, we would love to do that.
Thank you. We should be able to get this across the finish line. Hopefully we will soon, at least some parts and pieces of this. And you see it in your industry, but I'll tell you, as I travel, I see it in agriculture, I see it in hospitality, see it in recreation. It's in every conceivable corner now in the United States. We're hurting ourselves. And quite frankly, part of our inflation problem is tied to not enough workers. And we could take a big swing at inflation if we simply opened up some gates here and took some of the pressure off.
Makes good sense. And Steve, I know this is an issue for Amazon as well. And in fact, you just joined a coalition business letter to congressional leaders for permanent solutions supporting Dreamers as well. And you've called on the administration to utilize all available green cards as well. Can you add any thoughts on the importance of these comprehensive immigration reforms across the nation, immediate steps you think are important on behalf of Amazon, which employs over 1 million people here in the U.S.?
Well, I mean, this is a really important conversation to have in this moment. And I'm grateful, Congressman, to your efforts here and the rugged pragmatism that you demonstrate here, looking at your own district, looking at the low unemployment, the Silicon Slopes and the job creation that's happening there. I'm really struck by your description of the challenges that that were faced hundreds of years ago in settling part of the district. I would just want to say, as an advocate for those Amazonians, that Amazon workers that are pursuing green cards and that would stand to benefit if the EAGLE Act were enacted into law. I mean, those rugged individuals, that they have to, they go through similar challenges that you were kind of describing in, the hardships and the uncertainty. These are highly sought after employees that we've worked very hard to recruit to the company, and then to put them in a very uncertain status where they're trying to naturalize, they're trying to do the right thing, and yet they get caught in a system that will make it very hard for them to have the American life, the American dream that they're looking for, even as you say, if they're only going to be here for a short period of time potentially and go home. The hardest part of my job is explaining to those great men and women who work at Amazon, and I'm sure it's the same for the other companies, how, with, as you said, hundreds of co-sponsors, it's like a civics lesson to try to explain how this can't get done. And so your persistence on this, bringing it up in the context of must-pass legislation like the defense authorization bill, I just would want to say to you here that we're going to, continue to do our part on the private sector side to work with you and work with your co-sponsors here to look for any opportunity that we can to advance this legislation. It's not the overarching comprehensive solution, but as you have correctly pointed out, it would make a big difference, and it would be a huge morale boost to folks that are creating a lot of economic development and creating jobs and creating great products that we're very proud of that are part of the American success story. We'll continue also to work with, as Jason pointed out and Kent outlined, and I won't reiterate, but the Dreamer situation too is one where the policy is just not keeping up with the facts on the ground, and we've been proud as a company to engage on this. Both we do employ Dreamers at Amazon, but we also just on a kind of a fundamental kind of American fairness principle, we're going to continue to work on the issue. Thank you very much for your advocacy. We'll continue to push.
Thank you, Steve. You've prompted me to as we talk about those earlier settlers of Utah, I guarantee you 9 out of 10 of them, if not more, were from foreign countries, just newly arrived here in the United States. And they became, the salt of the earth, the backbone of my state and many parts of our United States. My own great grandmother came from Scotland across on a ship with 3 children, not knowing her future. But those are the people who make us who we are, and that we can't see that, and that we're not allowing the current generation of those talented people to come into the United States is really unfortunate. And the reality of it is, look, that talent's going someplace. Sure wish it was here in the United States.
Yeah. Thanks, Congressman. It's a great reminder of the importance of the American foundational story to this current day policy debate. Shannon, I wanted to ask you on behalf of Intel and the thousands of jobs you're creating, manufacturing facilities going up across the U.S., your thoughts on this immigration discussion and what we can do to move something forward.
Sure. So if I could backtrack for just a moment, I'd also like to add my thanks to Congressman Curtis for the EAGLE Act. Our former Intel chairman, Andy Bryant, once said, the ingredient we start with is sand, and everything else is value added by people. So people are the brain power behind U.S. innovation, and we have to find ways to fill our immediate and intermediate need for STEM-trained professionals, while we also work to boost our domestic pipeline of talent. There's tremendous opportunity here for both U.S. workers and foreign-born individuals. So again, thank you for your leadership and efforts on that. Jason, I think you were asking about how, with maybe CHIPS funding, what that means for the workforce, and how we can address some of those qualified workforce, having a qualified workforce and the challenges to build that. The challenge is real. As we bring online new fabs here in the U.S., the need for talent will be critical. Each Intel fab supports 1,500 Intel employees, as I said earlier. We're currently building 4 new fabs, which means about 6,000 new positions need to be filled. That's on top of the 12,000 trade workers we need to build and outfit those facilities. In addition to those direct jobs, each new fab supports thousands of other jobs. I think I mentioned we have a 13x multiplier. That's among partners and suppliers in the broader community. So we estimate that those 4 new fabs alone will create 78,000 or more direct and indirect jobs. That's a lot of jobs. And to meet those workforce needs, we invest significant resources in new and existing programs to expand our talent pipelines here in the US. So, I think you alluded to this already, Jason, but, we announced our first greenfield site in over 40 years in Ohio. That's a $20 billion investment to build 2 new leading edge chip factories. One of our top reasons for choosing Ohio is access to the diverse workforce that they have there and strong educational institutions both in Ohio and in the region. to jumpstart the development of curriculum with semiconductor-specific instruction in that region and frankly across the country. We will invest approximately $50 million over the next decade to establish an education partnership with Ohio universities and importantly, community colleges too, because of course, not all of these jobs require advanced degrees, which is important to that workforce. This is in addition to the $50 million that Intel is investing in a $100 million partnership with the National Science Foundation to expand the pipeline of technical expertise here in the US. Outside of these programs, Intel and the broader semiconductor industry are working on new and innovative programs to help train and recruit the workers that we need. For instance, we began piloting an accelerated training program, what some people may call a boot camp for entry-level technicians. Another example is an industry-wide effort that we support to establish registered apprenticeship programs for technicians and other fab workers. The programs are on pilot right now, but we're hopeful that the program is successful and can be scaled nationwide. Lastly, we also invest in U.S. innovation competitiveness by investing in the skills necessary for the technologies of the future. So of course, semiconductors are the bedrock physical technology undergirding these, but you also need people to develop those technologies in the future. And just yesterday, we announced another milestone in our AI for Workforce program. 15 community colleges across the U.S. will receive grants to build their AI labs to help prepare current and future workers with AI skills. So those grants are about $40,000 each, and that program has had tremendous success so far, and we're proud to make that announcement.
Great. Thanks, Shannon. Congressman, we just have a few minutes left with you, and I wanted to make sure to ask you about another area where you are extremely active, and that is your status as the founding member and co-chair of the Conservative Climate Caucus. My guess is you mentioned earlier that the Utah 3rd is the youngest congressional district in the country. I believe the average age in your district is 26, which probably explains why your Twitter bio describes you as a self-proclaimed millennial. That's my guess as to why you do that. You've talked about, in all seriousness, climate issues is incredibly important to Utahns, to the country, to your, I believe, 13 grandchildren that you have. So I wanted to ask you, given that the tech industry is so focused, so dedicated on energy efficiency, on environmentally sensitive products and services, why you think this area is important for policymakers, why you're so focused, why you co-founded the Conservative Climate Caucus, where the work is headed there on clean energy solutions, and what we can do to help support your work there.
Excellent. Thanks for bringing that up. By the way, you are really sharp because we just had our 13th grandchild 2 days ago. So I don't know how they updated you.
Up to date. That's great.
Congratulations. We're actually expecting our 15th in the coming months. And you're right, this is about the next generation. And it is also clearly an impact of representing the youngest district in the country, where to me it was just untenable that Republicans had not stepped up to the climate table as part of the discussion. It implied that we somehow didn't care or that we denied the science. And personally, I don't believe those things are true, but we were letting ourselves be branded that way. So I founded the Conservative Climate Caucus to demonstrate that we do care and we have ideas, really important ideas that need to be at that climate debate. Shocking to me and to the world was that it's now the second largest caucus in Washington, D.C. Imagine a climate caucus for Republicans, the second largest caucus in Washington, D.C. A third of all House members have joined. One joined last night. If you're familiar with the Freedom Caucus, they're kind of the hard right of our party. Last night, one of their members joined. We have 3 other of their members in the caucus. It's really, really exciting to get these people going on the offensive on climate, because without Republican ideas at the table, we're missing an important part of this conversation. And as you all well know, we'll never make long-term progress here in Congress if it's simply a one-sided issue. And so super excited and have had just tremendous support from all of your companies and many, if not really everybody I talk to here representing companies in Washington, D.C. are just so pleased that finally there's a Republican voice in this conversation. And I think a really critical voice. I think mistakes have been made on the climate path. And I think Republicans have some of the answers to some of those mistakes that are really, really important. So thanks to all of your support on it. Thanks for letting me bring it up. If you see any members of our caucus, pat them on the back and tell them thank you. for joining. They need that validation. It can be a little scary, to be honest. You guys know this, as a Republican stepping out on climate, and sometimes they get beat up back home. So any love or support we can give them here is very, very important.
Fantastic. Kent, Google, obviously well known for being a verb in the search engine space, but also one of the world's premier cloud services providers, and energy and environmental policy issues I know are enormously important to Google.
Yeah, I mean, we are believers in sustainability, both in terms of our operation of our own data centers around the world, but also as a matter of public policy. So the fact we're having a wider bipartisan conversation about sensible ways to make progress on that, no monopoly on good ideas on this, and there's a huge amount of work to do in the United States and moving global conversation. Some of that is going to be technology innovation. Some of that is going to be great public policy. So we will do everything we can to pat everybody on the back for joining in on this. Thank you very much, Congressman, for your leadership there.
Yeah, that's great. And Steve, same thing. Amazon, known as a retailer, but also has a little bit of a side business in the cloud area as well.
Well, I mean, I would just echo Kent's comments, and Congressman, you're 100% right. Again, I said rugged pragmatism before. I'll say it again. I think that there's a lot that can be done here, and I can say from industry's perspective, we're out doing this, on our own, and we created the climate pledge at Amazon, and we've been taking leadership position, each of the companies in their own way, leading in this space. But we're deploying now 100,000 electric vans into to electrify our fleet. We're going to be fully using renewable energy by 2025, and trying to step up the Paris commitments. And we're doing this because it's the right thing to do for the reasons that you already articulated. And we're very happy to partner. We're very happy to lead here. But it's fundamental, and it's something that again, I think that by having companies invest in renewable energy and fleet electrification is going to drive the per unit cost of this down for everybody else. And so, I think that there are some really interesting market solutions by having, your American companies investing.
Thanks, Jason. I know Shannon would love to share something as well. They've called a committee vote. I'm going to run on you, Shannon. I'm following what you're doing there as well. To all of you, I'm following you. You are way out ahead of government. Thank you for being out ahead of us on that. If it were just up to government, we would all fail. So we need you, and we need your innovation.
Well, Congressman, your timing.
I'm going to slide on you.
Your timing is perfect. We've come to an end of our event together. Enormously grateful for you, for the innovation that brought you here, and for all the work that you're doing. You have our commitment. We'll continue to support on behalf of ITI. Thank you to Congressman Curtis for taking time with us. I also want to thank Kent Walker from Google, Steve Hartel from Amazon, Shannon Taylor from Intel for joining us today. And I want to thank all of you in the audience for being with us today as well. Although we've reached the end of our event, it's certainly not the end of our conversation. In addition to all of our speakers, you in the audience are a vital part of the work that we do at ITI to help advance the important public policy issues that we have discussed today. Please be sure to follow ITI on Twitter at ITI_TechTweets. We're also on LinkedIn as well to stay connected. And we will have our next event in the Bridge for Innovation series very soon. Please watch for more details on that. In the meantime, please visit us at bridgeforinnovation.org to learn more. I'm Jason Oxman on behalf of ITI and our entire team. Thanks for being with us today, and look forward to seeing you next time.